Remember, you're leading this show, so you ask the questions.
You got it. All right, we're here live. We're here with Jason Cusson. How you doing, man?
Very well, thank you. Very glad to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. We do a lot of the old UFC, the legends of UFC. We do the modern UFC guys, and man, we wanted to bring you on because I heard that you invented the UFC cage. How did that come about?
Well, when people say I invented it, that was pretty much Pythagoras created the octagon or invented the octagon. It was about 3,000 years before I was born. So all I did is figure out it was my first attempt at the wheel, really. But
So, I heard that originally, like Hornet maybe wanted a moat with alligators in it and like all
uh,
kinds of crazy stuff going on.
yeah,
How did it become the
everybody had lots of
octagon?
ideas. There was things like the alligators. There was also we talked about electrified fence. We talked about razor wire. A lot of crazy shit that I'm kind of glad didn't, they didn't ask me to do. And they came to me and they asked me for something that was not a boxing ring.
Excellent, excellent. And when you originally made the octagon, what did you think about? You made it just like a cage, really? You put the plywood on the ground. Is it like pretty similar to the modern day cages, or what?
It's similar now that the budgets are a little different. We didn't have much of a budget to work with, but what we did was I built a platform which is very similar to stuff that I'd used for car commercials, or you could park a car on it. If you looked at it, you wouldn't think it was as strong as it was. But when believe me, when those guys originally the original Octagon, when those guys were hitting the mat, there was very little padding because initially we only had carpet padding, like under your living room carpet, you know.
Wow.
And yeah, wasn't a whole lot, wasn't a whole lot of padding then. No neoprene at that time because it wasn't in the budget. But and there was the whole thing was you hit that thing. It was might as well have been landing on the concrete floor.
Wow. So what was the surface? So it was a carpet, and then there's just like what was that actually constructed of underneath the carpeting?
Well, it was plywood. It was 3/4 inch plywood, and what I had is a series of 1x3s. It almost looked like ladders. So every 18 inches underneath that was like, but I forget exactly how high. I think it was like maybe 2 feet. It was just a 1x3, which is not. It doesn't look like a substantial wood, but you can't break wood by pressing it down when
Right.
lengthwise. You can break it if it's linked. If it's going running horizontal to the ground. But yeah, it was a very rudimentary octagon. But that's what it worked for the 6 years that I worked on the show. So
And then, did you initially have like the lock system for the doors? Because I remember, didn't
yes,
a sumo wrestler push a guy through the door? How did that happen?
Talatule actually pushed. Oh my God, now I got to think of his name. But anyway, it was Keith Hackney. Talatule pushed Keith Hackney. Not Talatule, actually, it was Cameron Yarborough pushed Keith Hackney. Actually broke the steel.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and basically these were like heavy duty, like you'd find in a farmyard kind of latches. Just U-shaped latches that went on one side on each side of the bar to hold the door closed. But they actually, yeah. Keith that was the instrument that Cameron used to break the octagon. The only time it ever actually got broken. So
Wow, that's crazy because like we do a lot of work with the fights now, and the pin they use to hold that cage door closed is so thin. Sounds thinner than that U thing that you're talking about now. Hopefully, they don't get Manuel Yarbrough back in there to throw someone through there. Jeez.
yeah, yeah, well, yeah, manually over, yeah. But it was well. Obviously, they've had a lot more time and a lot more budget to deal with it than we had at the time. So
Wow, that's so crazy. And then was the bottom of the cage covered like the fencing? Because even now, like if you get a cheap
initially,
cage,
no. Well, actually, if you look at old like 1 and 2 films, you'll see that even the padding didn't have vinyl covers on it then because it wasn't in the budget. So what we did is I just had basically the circular pieces of foam that went over all the metal, all the big rods, and those were just with zip ties, like huge zip ties.
Yeah, I just noticed them coming up like once I started fighting and got into the cage myself, sometimes you get in Jim's cage and they don't always do the best job of keeping the fencing underneath there, and it's very sharp. And then
Well,
you see
yeah.
the first UFCs and you see it come up at times too. And
Well, the way that I initially did it is the fence ran below the level of the fighting surface.
mhm.
So what had happened is that they couldn't really get down there. But then I saw like some guys like they weren't getting stuck in it, but I could see that there was the opportunity for them to slip down there. So we started shoving foam in there too to stop them from going underneath. Believe me, the whole thing. Because remember when we started this, none of us, somebody asked. I remember actually the very first fight. Was it Telatuli and Gerard Depardieu or what? No, no.
Goodall, yeah, Gerard Goodall.
Godot. So anyway, Teller walked in and he looked at it. He said he was concerned that this wasn't going to hold him. And I said, "Don't worry about the floor." I said, "But I'm really curious about the fence." And it obviously held him, so it became iconic. The black vinyl coated fence. So.
Did they give you any trouble about watching through the fence, like concern for the audience to see through the fence?
Well, no, that was the whole purpose. The reason I used fence was so that they could see through it. Because once you step back from it, you can see everything.
Yeah, especially when you're elevated over it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And but initially they talked about things like plexiglass, and I was like, well, that's just going to end up all covered with like spit and blood and all kinds of shit, So I was like, I
Yeah.
have no idea what's going to happen with that. But you don't want somebody having to clean the whole ring every single fight. And so I was literally walking down the street, running my finger along a fence, thinking about this, and because I thought about chain link, and I was like, oh no, these guys are going to rip their black backs off on like metal fence. And then I found some vinyl coated chain link fence. Happened to run my finger across it. I was like, that'll work. It wasn't genius, but it all seemed to work out.
How'd you figure out how tense to get it so they don't like bounce off it and like it's the actual wall itself?
That was kind of a hit or miss thing. You kind of, it's like, well, you see how it worked the first time, and I saw like a lot of butt prints in it initially, so we tightened it up a little, and it just, yeah, you just a trial and error on that one.
Yeah, now like you go to a cage, it feels like a real wall. If you go, you're actually like at one of the major shows and you
Well,
see a
that's
cage, it's like a real wall. And then you
well,
go to
that half of that is for the promoters, so they don't have to replace it every time.
How
And the
much?
other half is because the fighters actually need it to be strong enough to make sure that they maintain. I'll tell you what, that first fight I was talking about, sorry about Tella's teeth, but it was for me. That was actually, it became a joke. I forget, one of the guys I think in the TV truck said, "Oh, that was the moment of tooth."
How much did it cost?
Oh yeah, we'll hold them. All right.
How much did it cost to make the cage?
The original
Like-
Cade, oh god, it wasn't much. Like maybe I'm just spitballing here. It's been a long time, but dude, I don't have anything in front of me. But I would say like probably $35,000-$40,000.
so that'd be like $80,000 today, probably.
Oh,
Right? 'Cause
well,
it's
easily,
in
but
the 90s.
also now you'd use better materials because you know what you're
Yeah.
dealing with.
Right.
When we were doing it, it's like we had no idea. That,
Oh no.
yeah, hang on. Still here?
Yeah,
All
we're
right.
here.
Sorry, guys. I had this little setup to hold the phone, and apparently it's not working. So I'm just going to hold the phone.
Enough of this question. Tomb.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no. But the thing is, you remember that the original Octagon, was actually on its way out to the trash after the first event,
Wow.
and Art Davey had the foresight, because I had all the shit on carts ready to go out to dumpsters, because we had all figured out it's like they're never letting us do this again. And Art Davey said, "Hey, hold on a second. I'm going to get a container, and we're just going to keep this and see what happens."
Yeah, you really thought you weren't gonna be able to do it again?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Art Davie wrote a book about it. He called it "Is This Legal?" Because we had no idea.
Was there a lot of backlash against that? It seemed like a lot of people didn't even know about it too.
It was pretty insane, I'll tell you. We got a lot of backlash the entire time I was with the show. Constantly. Bob Meyerowitz and these guys were always in court trying to, because everybody kept trying to shut it down. The reason that the original places that we did the fights, like Birmingham and Denver, was because they didn't have fight commissions, and we could get away with it there. But any place with a fight commission wouldn't let us fight.
Right.
And people like John McCain and different governors, the governor of New York forced us out of Niagara and made us bring the thing to Dothan, Alabama overnight. But
yeah,
we were
from there. We know.
and thankfully for Bob Meyerowitz, he was determined that this was going to go on. And Bob Meyerowitz, I think, is an unappreciated person in the entire process of keeping this thing going and operating. And if it wasn't for him and David Isaacs, a few other guys, it really might not be a sport today.
That's crazy. And when you had to move from Buffalo to Dothan, Alabama, did you have two cages, or did you have to move the cage from Buffalo to?
Well, what I did is we were going to move the cage, and all of a sudden I was in a position where I had to learn like the size of cargo doors in passenger planes, so we could put people in the seats, everybody with the show. But I had to figure out what we could get on the plane. So I had a truck driving a lot of the octagon down there. I had called people down in Dothan to build an octagon that never got used, but I had an out. You know what I mean? It's like worst case scenario, I've got this, and they didn't. What they built down there was not really wouldn't have stood up, honestly, the way that the original cage did. But luckily, all of our shit made it down there in time, so it all worked out. And again, that was like just the work. Everybody was up for like 36, 48 hours just trying to make sure that the show went on. Matter of fact, I think we gave most of the tickets out to like a local military base or something.
Yeah, I can't imagine how you sold the tickets for that, because there's UFC in 13 hours, guys.
Right? Yeah. No. They went and they gave out the tickets, man. And I'll tell you, I remember standing there on the apron with I was standing there with a paint roller on a stick, painting all the shit black on the outside on the apron. And they were like, "Can we open the doors?" I'm like, "No, wait, 2 more minutes."
Oh man. So
yeah, that was an insane event, I'll tell you. And it turned out to be a great event, honestly.
I got a couple questions to go back to taking apart and putting together the cage. I help out at some of the local shows now, and I do the cage, I do the commentary and stuff. Right now the cages are easy to break down and put back together. Did you build it like that, or was it very difficult the first time to assemble it and reassemble it?
Honestly, I used to work on a lot of commercials and music videos. So a lot of work would go into setting it up, and usually the breakdown was pretty quick because we were throwing it away. And this particular event obviously had to be reused. We didn't know that at the time, but it had to be reused, and it ended up it was a lot more work. Usually it was about a 2-day setup just on the octagon itself.
Oh wow.
Yeah, now we can probably get it set up in probably 2 hours, maybe.
Right. Yeah. No. I've seen. I did some work. Over the last few years, I did a lot of work with a company called Combate Global, which is a Spanish language event run by Campbell McLaren, who was the original president of the UFC. But he, I've done some work on his show, and yeah, we could put that thing together overnight, and it wasn't not like it is today. It's a lot easier. They've made a lot of nice adjustments to stuff I really appreciate. I love those little vents around the side. You can put lighting underneath, and we didn't have any of that. We didn't have the budget or the setup for that. So
And then the place for the photographers to stand on there welded on, and like you get great camera angles and great video angles and all
Well,
that
we were
kind of
just
stuff.
talking about Yarborough. I'll tell you what, the first time I ever saw him, I was on a 25-foot high A-frame ladder. Like this thing was old too, man. It's made out of wood, and like the middle piece went up straight, like a single ladder going up the middle. And I was climbing up that, hanging up a lipstick camera. So I'm up there 25 feet in the air, and I looked down and I saw Yarborough walk into the cage, and I was like, "Holy shit!" Guy was just enormous. But even from up there, it's like seeing it from the air. I was like, "Wow," you know. But now it's now obviously it's everything's well, technology obviously got a lot better, and you can now you could do it with a drone pretty much. But
Do you, when you initially made it, did you have to think about camera angles and stuff too, or did you have the TV guys worry about that?
all I was worried about was visibility for the cameras and the audience. That's all really all. That's the only thing I had to worry about. And again, that comes back to the fencing because it allowed visibility for the audience and the cameras.
Is it higher now? Because I remember Tank Abbott almost threw somebody out of it. Is it a higher wall now, or is it the same height?
To my knowledge, it's not higher. It's actually lower. Initially, it was a 6-foot fence, and I think they went down to like 5.5 feet at one point. And I'm not sure what it is now, but yeah, that Tank Abbott did that, and that was actually he was offered a bonus to do that because Campbell, the guy I was just talking about, he told Tank, he said if you can throw him out over the top of the cage, he said I'll give you an extra $1,000.
Wow.
So Tank, he went for it.
How much money was in it for you, like putting this cage together back in the day?
Honestly, not a lot. I mean, enough to enough to get paid, but it wasn't like that was the only thing I could do.
Right. And so, do you get any residuals from the Octagon or any of that?
All I get is bragging rights, brother. All I get is bragging rights.
Man, that's terrible.
No, it's not really. I really feel no fault with it because it was work for hire. I don't feel bad about it. It's I didn't, like I said, I never knew it was going to happen twice. Then it became like a regular gig a couple of times a year, and I get no bitch.
So, like the Octagon, I guess, is trademark, but you see all the other sporting organizations using a cage as well. Like some of them don't have 8 sides, some are perfectly round. What do you think about all that? Do you think that's okay for them just to take that idea, or what do you think about that?
Honestly, I think it's great. God bless them, man. Have fun. It's the thing was built in the idea of just an event to watch and enjoy. So if people get to watch and enjoy it, like I still get calls I still get interviewed fairly regularly. I still get, it's I'm happy with my place in the history of it, and I don't have a problem with anybody else enjoying it too. And of course, like you said, there's round ones. There's one like boxing event now that does like a 3-sided one. That's nuts. Because one of the reasons for the Octagon was so that you couldn't get trapped in the corners like you do with a boxing ring.
Right.
And then they put up a 3-sided one. Makes no sense to me at all.
It's like a weapon MMA now too. Like there's a whole wrestling section. Like you can compete with Olympic level wrestlers just by putting them on the wall. Like there's a whole different style of wrestling, and like you've created a whole new fighting style just by having that surface to go against.
Well, and honestly, back in the original, I mean, when they had gis, all of a sudden somebody figured out, it's like, hey, well, the gi is a weapon, a fighting weapon. Because you could grab the gi and wrap it around a guy, your own gi, and wrap it around a guy and do all kinds of stuff with the fabric. And they had to stop that because, it's like basically anybody wearing a gi was bringing in a weapon. And that was,
can be used against you pretty well too. Like people can grab it and really like use it against you as well. So like if you're equal level jujitsu, now you can choke down with their own gi.
Well, so, yeah. If you watch Hoist made he made it very clear that it was a weapon when he was using it because he would trap guys in his own clothing. So.
What did you think about were you too much behind the scenes? Did you know about like Horning and stuff and Hoist?
Oh yeah, very well. Yeah,
rules and stuff.
Yeah,
about that?
No, remember it was a very small organization then, so everybody was there all the time.
Yeah.
So we all kind of hung out. We all had dinner together, all that shit. It was they're all great guys. Believe me, every fighter I've ever met in my life has always been a great guy.
Yeah, we had Ken Shamrock on, we had Frank Shamrock on. We
Yep,
talked to both of them.
both a couple of great guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Frank talked about like he wasn't allowed to wear his wrestling shoes in original UFC, and then he was a little bit salty about it because Hoist was able to wear his gi. And
Right.
like how did that happen? Were like the Gracies really just putting in their own rules, or?
No. Actually, it wasn't that the Gracies were putting in their own rules. Is that the fighters were really the ones making the rules initially. Because remember, we didn't know. You got TV guys and music guys, and and a stage carpenter. It's like we didn't know. So they had at the original fighter meetings, the fighters were making up a lot of the rules. That's how even though the tagline was "there are no rules," there were some unspoken ones. Obviously, no fish hooking, that kind of shit. No eye gouging. No nut punches. But yeah. And then as it progressed, they kind of figured out it's like, okay, well, being that feet were so active, they didn't want guys wearing shoes and boots.
Right.
Because that's obviously that guy's got protected feet, and if kicks are allowed, this guy kicks somebody with a boot on or a shoe on, it's really not fair. And that's when they like kind of get rid of the gis as well.
Yeah, they allowed shoes later on. You were able to wear shoes for a while, and then they banned the shoes too. And then for a while you could wear shoes, but you couldn't kick if you had the shoes on. The wrestling shoes give you a huge advantage on that surface for sure.
Well, yeah. Also, initially, all those logos on the mats were hand painted.
Oh wow!
So yeah, those things were fast as hell, man. Once you got some sweat on those things, all of a sudden you look like the kid in the Tom Cruise in the beginning of Risky Business. It's like you just slide right across, And that was a difficulty for the fighters for a while too, because and that day that's all we had. We just I had some people painting the logos. That was like just paint. It was very slick.
That's so crazy. I can't believe you actually you had to hand paint those too. Now all those decals are still slippery, but they're nothing like that. That is insane.
Well, now they can get them electronically printed on there, so it's not like it was then. But yeah, back in that day, it was it was pretty crazy. You would I honestly, it was like walking up my driveway in the winter. You know what I mean? It was,
yeah.
Yeah, those guys a lot. I don't think the fighters get as much credit as they do for not only the circumstances that they were in. That different martial arts didn't necessarily know the other martial arts. Anybody could say that they were whatever they wanted to say they were, and they had to deal with the slippery surface, all that kind of stuff, the bounce off the cage. Remember, it was very rudimentary at the time. We didn't know that, it was going to be, I mean, they hired me and I didn't know shit about martial arts, so it's, I was like, oh, you mean like Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris, shit like that? And that's all I knew, Yeah. So,
how did you think it was going to go when you first saw the first event? Did you think like the strikers were going to win? What would you think was going to happen at the show?
Well, I do got to say that when Tully got his teeth kicked out, I did turn a little green. I was like not expecting that. Actually, the whole crowd turned a little green. No one was expecting that. It's like, wow, this is real,
Yeah.
And obviously, it's thankfully it's made. People ask me all the time. It's like, is this like wrestling? I'm like, no, it's not like professional wrestling. Not at all. Not at all. These guys, I mean, those guys, nothing against wrestlers. I know that they work their balls off and it's a hard business. But with the UFC, those fighters deserve a lot of respect.
They surely do. And like that, you went into the show. Did you think anyone was going to die? Were you worried like you were going to get sued? Like
one time, and I can't even remember the name of the guy, but Tank hit a guy so hard that his head was like over here. and he was against the fence. And I looked at the guy standing next to me. I said, "It finally happened."
Yes.
Yeah,
And thankfully the guy was okay, thank God. But for a minute there, I was like, okay, it's okay. This is we all thought it might happen eventually.
Hey, Caveman, Caveman, was that the fight? Tank was making fun of the guy who like this.
Yeah, he was,
Yeah.
You weren't worried that someone was gonna die like the first one they did before you knew how it was gonna be?
No, well, honestly, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect. It was just, I thought, hey, listen, I got on a plane and I turned to Bill Wallace, and I was like, and you, I saw your name in the crew call thing. Your name's what, Sugarfoot? he was like, no, Superfoot. I was like, oh, okay, that's then. I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about.
John Matua was the guy. They got
okay.
Oh, poor man. That's one that lives in infamy. Every Ultimate Knockouts, he's definitely on that.
Oh yeah, man. I'll tell you that one I was nervous.
Were you involved at all with the sale of the Zuffa or any of that stuff?
No. I left the show. I left the show in '99, and because my wife and I were moving away, and we decided I was going to get out of the film business. But and it was just before the sale, and there were things they couldn't tell me at a higher level, so they wanted to cut my salary, and I was like, well, no, I'm not going to do it for less.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, kind of kicking myself in the ass on that one.
Maybe you don't know how it would go. Like, new ownership's always tough. They could definitely get rid of you at times. Like, it was definitely crazy once Dana got in there. Like.
Oh yeah. People ask me all the time. It's like, do you know Dana? I said, well, I've met him twice. And the first time was when Art went in the Hall of Fame. So.
Do they ever talk about like bringing you in to like do discussions or anything for the UFC or?
Oh yeah, I've been on a couple of documentaries they've done. Actually, like 3 or 4 documentaries that they've done, and some interviews and that kind of stuff. So they've been very generous in keeping me, involved.
That's awesome. You should like maybe be put into the Hall of Fame. Like,
I think so.
Most iconic thing.
Nah, I honestly, maybe as a minor contributor, but the UFC really, it's about the fighters actually deserve a lot more credit and fame than I do, and I appreciate it. I really do. Like I said, I enjoy the bragging rights, but nothing more fun than sitting at a bar and some guy talking about UFC, and I'm like, hey, you know who created that octagon? Me. And they're like, no, you didn't. I'm, hey, I stole this line from a movie. It's like, no, Google me, bitch.
That's so cool, man. That's a very cool party thing to say too, especially.
Yeah, right. It's fun.
Did you get close to any of the fighters?
I'm sorry?
Did you get close to any of the fighters during your time with there?
Oh yeah, well, obviously I get to know a lot of, especially the early time. I got to know a lot of the fighters very well. And like I said, everybody's pretty cool. Tito always made me a little nervous. I found, and then years later, we kind of met up and talked and had a conversation, which was hilarious because like cameramen all over the place watching the two of us sit at a table in a hotel and chat. And Tank Abbott, I still refer to him as David. because he's Tank in a room, but if you're alone with him, he's Dave.
Is he all right? He seems pretty cool. Like outside,
he's very cool, very cool.
He lost a lot of weight, man. He's looking kind of healthy now.
Well, yeah, he had some illness, but I guess he's doing all right now. It's like anybody else, he's getting older, and so am I.
Yeah. Did you what did you think about Art Jimerson? Did you think he was going to do all right?
Actually, Art was interesting. I wasn't really sure what to, especially with the one glove shit. I was like, so I think he was trying to protect his hand, but so he could like continue to box. I'm not sure what the theory was behind it, but obviously it didn't.
Yeah.
He gave a good performance, but I think by it was what he was a little out leveled.
Yeah, he got hoist right off the bat. I would have liked to see
Yeah, right.
one of the
Yeah.
strikers.
Yeah,
We,
yeah.
we had him on the podcast too.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, Art. Yeah.
yeah, he's cool now. I
Oh
don't know
yeah.
how it was.
No, he's a great guy. It just
Yeah.
I just at the time. Well, he like none of us really knew what to expect.
Right.
He just said he didn't want to break his hand because he
Yeah,
wanted to box.
oh, there you go. Okay, so I was right.
Yeah, he's like, man, I don't want to hit this guy and break my hand. Maybe I just tap out real quick. I don't know what's going on. So
Well,
like,
a lot of people don't realize that boxers, the reason the gloves really are there to protect their hands, not so much the opponent.
yeah, for sure.
People think they're there to protect the opponent. No, that these guys hit so hard.
Yeah.
It's like they can break their hand anytime, anytime.
So like we work with a lot of high level like UFC like MMA guys, and then we work with high level boxers too. And there's no comparison in power between a boxer and an MMA guy. Like boxers have like a lot more power in the hands. Like
Well, that's where they're training and their training focus. That's what it's on.
right.
A boxer only works with his hands. MMA guys have to work with like their entire bodies.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, that's not taking away from boxers. Obviously, they got to be like hard midsection and all that shit. But they have strong legs, but not. It's not for stamina, not for kicking.
Yeah, it's definitely about getting yourself in position to punch. You don't have two weapons. You don't have to worry about two weapons.
Yeah.
There's a lot of skill involved, but it is they definitely know how to throw a much better punch than most guys. Although you're seeing a change with like guys like Ilya Taporia and some of the newer guys that can all box really well too.
Well, also boxers are more like I guess you could look at it as like a dart player, where all those shots are very accurate.
Mm-hmm.
MMA it's a little more wild with what's going on. So they don't have to be. I mean, they still have to be some pretty accurate, but not like a boxer. A boxer's got to know it's like this is where a boxer knows where his hand's going to land, just like an MMA guy does. But they also know that like half an inch either way could take a guy out.
Yeah,
MMA guy is going in there so he can get a grip. That's in my opinion. I'm not like believe me, I'm not a genius on the sport. So you know more than I do, Cave. So.
Do you still follow the sport at all?
A little bit. I like any tourist.
Yeah. Is it weird to like be like, man, I was at the start of this, and what I'm watching now is nothing like what we started with?
Well, it's certainly, I'll tell you what, there are some guys now who make a lot more money. I'd like to see all the fighters make a little bit more money, but it's like any business, it's profit and loss and all that shit. But there's a lot of hard guys out there. Guys train specifically for this now. They train in multi disciplines. Where back in the day, I mean, I had like people, ring card girls walking around. It's like Muay Thai, and or whatever other, yeah, right, yeah, all these like bizarre shit. And but now guys like kind of have to cover a much wider area of they have to have wider area of knowledge to get in there and fight. And it's because you don't know the other guy. It was also they can do scouting now. The guys then couldn't even do scouting. It's like whoever showed up, and that's who you fought.
Yeah, like you don't know who you're gonna fight. You don't even know what was gonna happen originally. You don't know. Maybe the show gets canceled. There's not a lot of money in it, and you fought the fight.
Yeah, well, thankfully when I was doing it, we never had a canceled show, so that was pretty. And again, that's thanks to Bob Meyerowitz and David Isaacs and a few other people who they went to the mat to keep the show running.
You were close.
Did you think Horace Gracie was going to win the first show?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That skinny fuck. I thought he was doomed. Before he ever got in the cage, I was like, okay, well, sorry, you're the promoter's brother, but it's not going to happen. And then he proved himself. He got up there with, at that time you could actually grab onto the fence, and he could like. The guy had toes like a monkey, man. He could just grab on the fence like crazy shit, I was like, how the hell, how do you train for that? You've never been in here before.
They never got early access to the cage. They didn't get to train in there or anything before. Like
Well, basically like a walkthrough, usually the
yeah,
day before.
that's crazy that like you think your brother owns an organization, you get to play in a cage a little bit before the fights.
Well, we couldn't do that because his brother was part of the organization. So,
Yeah.
it's like had to be fair for everybody. But Horian had enough confidence in Hoist, and Hoist had enough confidence in himself. But honestly, at the time, he wasn't much taller than me and didn't weigh much more than me. And he was going in against some pretty serious fucking guys. So, thankfully I can all call friends. So that, which is a good thing.
I can't believe like that you were able to put this on, you guys as an organization, because like it's got to be so difficult to deal with just the people and everything. Like the first one I saw, I heard about UFC one was going to happen. I thought it was fake, like just some kind of fake WWE thing. And
Yeah.
then like you see the VHS tape of it, and you're like, oh my god, this was awesome. And then we
Yeah.
got two and we watched two live, and wow, it was awesome. And then everyone started watching. All my wrestling friends, we all started watching it. We all wanted to do jujitsu like Royce Gracie, and
Yeah.
then that whole boom started, and you started a whole entertainment.
Well, also
Sport.
remember the thing was built for a certain time period too, because what they did is they bought a certain amount of pay-per-view time and couldn't go over. So sometimes there was, if a fight was too quick, we were screwed. We were trying to figure out how to fill in the time. But if a fight went long or two fights went long, all of a sudden it's like, Jesus Christ, I hope somebody gets knocked out really quick, because we got to keep this. We don't want to go black, in the middle of a fight, and people paid for it. So
They happened in four, right?
I don't know which one, but probably, yeah.
Severn and Gracie.
Yeah.
When that one went 15 minutes and the pay per view cut off.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that happened.
I think it did. I forget. I honestly don't remember which one, but I think it did.
Man, that's gotta be so hard too. And then when did you guys go to the rounds? Were you already gone then, or did they go to the rounds before you left?
No. I think they went to rounds after I left. Now you're taxing me. This is 30 years ago, but
they did the 130-minute time period for a while, so you couldn't go over, so they could time it out. They started adding a time limit after I think 3 or 4.
Yeah, I think that was later than that. I think that was more like in the 15 in the teens.
Because
they might have done, but honestly, at that point, I was just so jaded by it. It's like I wasn't paying attention to that. I was just more concerned that, like, long as the cage stood there, the octagon was safe. That was all I worried about.
Because Gracie Shamrock 2 was 5, and that one went 30 minutes, and they stood him up and did that 5-minute overtime. So they already had time back then.
Oh, they were probably like wrapped up like anacondas there. That's probably the reason they did it. And John McCarthy was probably reffing that. So
yeah, he was there for too long.
Yeah, and John brought so much to the sport. I'm telling you. I don't know that John gets enough credit for what he brought to the sport. He wasn't on the first one, but he came in on 2, and he really did bring so much to the sport, and like a lot of. Without having regulations, made it regulated. It's like, okay, here's what we do in this situation. He was prepared for what might happen. So I don't think he gets enough credit for his importance to the sport.
He was going to quit if he couldn't stop the fights, right? After UFC 2.
Yeah, well, John's not a guy. He's when he says something, he means it.
Yeah, that was awesome. That's so great that there's so many good people at the Star Sport, like yourself and like Bob Myritz, all these people like. They really worked so hard to make this happen, and it became such a huge hit. Like there's billions of dollars in it now. Who could have saw that in 1994 when it started, right? 94?
93.
93.
Yeah. But and remember, they sold it for $2 million to the Fertittis.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man.
And hey, listen, I will not take anything away from Dana, because Dana's a showman and he helped make it big. We didn't have that kind of personality. Also, we didn't have the budget that he had. They came in with $100 million, and it's like, let's spend it on it, and we didn't have that. But I'll tell you what, the guys at the original guys there, the team behind it, they were pretty amazing. Like I said, Bob was in court every single fucking show. You know,
There's so
every
much
single show.
to say about you guys too. Like when you go back and look at their shows, every one of them was an event. Like UFC happens every month now. Like pretty much every week there's UFC, and it's like people or whatever. Back then, everyone knew everybody. Like
We were doing
you
like
go
four or
now
five,
for
yeah, we were
sports.
doing like 4 or 5 shows a year at the time. You know, back in the beginning, and you know, like I said, I was there 6 years. I think I was on 27 shows.
Can you
You know,
imagine now? Like there's UFC 318 just happened, right? Or 316, something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
right, yeah, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, these guys, like you said, they're doing them. They do them like every other week. You know, it's and well, and actually, there's. It seems to me you would know better than I, but it seems that they're slowing it down and spreading them out a little bit more. But for a while, it was constant, and that's how you build an audience. Like I said, Dana's done a great job with it, and you know I got nothing bad to say about him either. He's done a great job with it and really made it a sport.
They took over in COVID. They were the only sport going through COVID, and that
That's
really,
right.
really built them up. That's when they were going every week.
Yep.
That ESPN Plus deal, they had to put so many shows on for the year. So ESPN Plus was like the real driver behind all the extra shows. But now their TV contract's up again, so we'll see what happens now. Hopefully they'll be all over the place. Well, hopefully not, but
Well,
it seems like they're going to be all over.
I'm sure it's going to get picked up hugely, but also they were smart enough to create like I mean you know I challenge you to go to like any major city in the country and not find a literally UFC gym. You know that's they're everywhere. You know they were smart enough to branch out in what they were doing and make it more attainable to just the average watcher or whatever. It's like I could go and sign up for at a UFC gym now. My local CrossFit place was thrilled when they found out this is years ago, but 15, 20 years ago, they found out who I was and we happened to know each other and they were like, oh, can you come by? Because it's like because we're also doing that. We're also training this,
Yeah.
and on some side street here in my little town, all of a sudden there was like a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu gym. It's like what? I'm sure none of the Gracies grew up in Massachusetts, but
Hey man,
They have so
you
many
got to tell
yeah.
them the story about the jiu-jitsu in Buffalo.
What story about?
You know how jiu-jitsu in Buffalo started.
Oh yeah,
It was
like
only one black, it was like only one black belt, right?
yeah. Well, Chuck was a purple belt when he came here. He was living on Carson Gracie's couch, and he came here and he started jiu-jitsu, and then he made a bunch of black belts. Now there's a bunch of us. We're all over the place, and we all got our own gyms, and it's a mess, But it's like it expanded so much.
yeah.
It was crazy.
Well, like we were saying, it became so popular that it's like at a certain point it became really easy to expand. But when they initially did it, it probably was there. I'm sure they were a little sweaty about like do we open 50 gyms across the country? It's all these decisions, these business decisions, make a decision in the event itself. Because if those things go broke, then the event's going to go broke.
I think the UFC gyms are like a franchise. I think you have to pay them to use it, and then
Right.
it's on you. So like
Right.
it's just like if they go out of business, the UFC still made their money.
I believe that's correct. But at the same time, you got to have people who are willing to make that investment
Yeah, for
to
sure.
start
And
that gym.
yeah, it's a huge thing though. Like everyone's got a gym. You get a UFC gym, you get a UFC fighter, and people are like, oh yeah, let's go there. And they do really well. And because you have to have so much stuff to get one, you have to have all the fitness equipment and all
Right.
the PT stuff. Like you got to really have a huge investment to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. So in other words, like I was saying, if somebody's going to be willing to make that investment, and that somebody else putting their ass on the line for for a business, and it's based on somebody else's business. So that first business, which is the UFC, has to keep performing.
Yeah.
In order to keep getting the franchisees.
I definitely get where you're going now. Yeah, 100%. You're right. This is so awesome that we got the guy that made the cage. I spent like so much of my life in the cage, and like until just a couple of weeks ago, I didn't even know that he made the cage. So like this is a super honor. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks a fucking pant load for that. Glad
Well,
you did your research there, Cave.
But I didn't know who you were. So like, as soon as I found out, I was like, man, we got to get this guy on. Like Ray posted about it, and I was like,
I've Ray and I met years ago. So
yeah. Ray was
we
telling
were
me about
supposed
it.
to have, Caveman, we were supposed to have him on years ago.
Yeah, like
actually, when he messaged me, the message above the recent message said, "Can you be on the show?" And I looked and it said 2017. I was like, "Fuck! I should have got back on that one."
Man, so this is like Ray. One time we were supposed to do a podcast, and Ray's like, "I'll be there in about 10 minutes." And then I see on Facebook you checked in at a restaurant in New Jersey. I'm sitting in the podcast studio waiting. We used to have a studio.
Nice.
And I was sitting there waiting in the studio. It was like a 25-minute drive from where I live. And I waited for him for an hour. And
that makes me feel better, so I know it wasn't just me.
Yeah, it's not just you. Ray does that shit to everybody, so like, it's probably his fault.
Yeah, it's my fault. It is. It was my fault.
Awesome.
All right, man. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you.
I
Jason
appreciate it,
made
guys.
the original UFC cage, and the cage that we use every day now is because of you, man. And we
Yeah, do you guys?
There'd be no UFC.
Do you have any projects going on or anything?
Dude, I'm retired, man.
Oh, okay.
I'm as dead as disco, brother. I play golf and don't do shit. So.
Man, you should be getting some kind of stipend from the UFC for that cage.
I agree 100%.
Hey, you know what? The stipend is I get to do shows like this.
Awesome, man. Well,
yeah,
man, Ray, you better pay this guy then. Send him a check.
Yeah, well, hey, at least take me out to lunch. Let me know where you are. I have to fly there, but
yeah, we're in New York, man. We'll take you out anytime.
Oh, that's easy. New York's easy.
Yeah,
I'll take you to a K4 show.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, for sure. We'd love.
Yeah, I'd love to go.
Awesome, man. Cool. All right. Well, we're out. Make sure you guys check us out next week. We'll be back. We'll have another awesome guest. Probably not as cool as Jason, but we'll bring someone else in that's really cool. All right,
Thank you
guys,
very much,
out.
Cave, Ray. All right.
Peace.
Talk to you guys. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Bye.